fabulous session which we just heard. And I must compliment the extensive case studies which were presented here. And OGTC, I'm a great admirer. For several years, this is the 13th session which we are having. Earlier, it used to be 2 days conference. Now, I'm thinking that, as time gets compressed, people are finding it difficult to spend probably 2 days. But whenever I have seen this conference, people are very serious about the issues. They get emotionally charged about the issues, as you have been able to do. And it is such a pleasure that this has gone into a size and credibility which it has acquired. So I must compliment the entire team, Tony Uppalji and Kesarji and the whole team for this great... Sometimes it is easily said than done. All what the previous speaker said is all achievable. But if you forget what was the title of this whole conference, people, purpose and passion. Everything depends on these three words if you want to achieve even a little bit of what the previous sessions must have addressed. Because it is not necessarily the robots which are going to address these issues. Though I'm sure there was a session on artificial intelligence. Some of it might get addressed, but still we are going to depend on people. So this session is a little bit about this particular aspect. Soumya, you have put on the... Okay, let me just use this. I'm just going to do a jugalbandi because I'm not used to it so much. But this time I'm going to attempt because, I must have become outdated, I thought, So Nimesh is seeing factories like, Surinder has done. So I thought, we will try to do a little bit of macro view from me and then take a more hands-on micro view by Nimesh Dave. He has an organization called Idea Smith. So I will take about 20-25 minutes and then Nimesh would take about 30-35 minutes and then we'll have about 15 minutes of question and answer. So I don't want to really disturb that beautiful, chanting of the slokas. But I just wanted to say that even deities are going to be served by a robotic arm. Certainly something is disruptive, something is changing. And we are in that midst of this change. And since, we belong to an era where we used to love Shelley and Keats and Bernard Shaw, and I used to really love The Arms and the Man, several plays of Shaw, I thought, I'll just use this. Progress is impossible without change. And we are thinking that, change has happened only now. No, change has been constant. It's just that those who cannot change, their minds cannot change anything. So that is the entire issue on which this particular presentation is going to revolve around. And what I want to say is that when you look at an organization, I consider it as a basket of skills, competencies, and attitudes. You just look at any organization. There is a group of people and they bring on the table certain skills and competencies and they have certain attitudes which are beliefs or actionable beliefs become attitude. So once these are three on the table, there are certain external opportunities which are emerging, external changes which are happening. And if your competencies and skills and attitudes match or exceed the opportunities which are presented, we say there is a strategic fit. We say that the opportunities are going to be grabbed by the organization. But if you say that, the people are not having the skills and competencies, and the opportunities are presented to them, and the gravity is always there. If you throw an apple, we all know it will fall down. So the gravity to pull down an organization always exists. But it is the people who are lifting it up through their actions. And if those actions are not sufficient for the gravity which is pulling down, then we say that there is a downward spiral which the organization faces. This is the basis on which we are going to build this little bit of a presentation. There is a very beautiful presentation by Indira Parikh. Some of you may have heard about. She was a very well-known speaker along with Pulin Garg, who passed away. She said that an organization has an interplay of three types of energies: captive energy, frozen energy, and free energy. And let us just see this, what is this concept. The captive energy is when you started an organization. When you start an organization, people are very enthusiastic. They have a clear direction. They have a purpose. They're very passionate. And this particular captive energy is what actually gives birth to that organization. But then what happens over a period of time, it becomes frozen energy because the relationships and the interactions are somewhat frozen in time, and the expectations of each other prejudge what each one can do, and therefore you stop releasing free energy. And it is actually the free energy which is the basis of all new activities which take place in organization. So if you take it as a jar, the organization, and the free energy is coming down, just like in oxygen because of the pollution in Delhi, you are certainly suffocated enough, and the organization slowly start becoming rather colorless, orderless. It becomes just an entity. It is not having the enthusiasm. It does not produce new ideas. It just becomes disintegrated. So how do you control this interplay of captive, frozen, and free energy and ensure that every day and every new month the organization has sufficient free energy so that it can create new ideas and new initiatives or new activities? And even after you want to go back from the seminar and some of the ideas which were discussed here, if you want to implement, the organization should have that free energy. But if you have known that a person is entering my door and this guy has been with us for the last 20 years and he is exactly going to behave in this fashion, there is only frozen energy and there is no discussion in terms of any new initiative because you already prejudged what is going to happen in that particular conversation. This is often the story of most of the organizations. Let's just go back to the previous one. Therefore, there is a continuous struggle between this progressive and regressive forces in an organization. And unfortunately, we find that we talk about their attitudinal change, their skills should change, but we often do not give them the chance to change, not the tools to change, nor the time to change. In many of the overseas organizations, people are just given you would have seen many films, on which ruthlessly they give you a pink slip, not having told them 2 years ago that the new skills which are required by you 2 years down the line, these are the set of skills. And this is the time you have to acquire those skills. And these are the tools we are providing you with those to acquire those skills. And thereafter, if the person has failed, it's a different matter. But often, the organization is not even forecasting the skills which you will require 2 years from now. And therefore, you take the people by surprise when you say that your artificial intelligence has arrived or industrial 4.0 has already arrived and Germany has done it, so it is time that we do it, and Prime Minister or the skill minister or somebody has made the announcement and therefore we should all be ready to implement. And then you find most of the people are not prepared to get into the bandwagon, and Jim Collins said, you are either on the bus or otherwise off the bus. And we have no time to wait for anybody as the bus proceeds. You are on the station when you get in. If you don't get in, the bus is going to still ride. Now, this is where the old adage that people are your biggest assets are under question now. The right people are becoming the assets, not necessarily the wrong people. If you have the right people on the right seats and you have got this free play of interplay of energies which are going to create these new ideas, and the regressive forces are kept at bay, and the gravity of anyway the downward spiral or 5.7% growth which we are currently facing, or today's newspaper says 47% manufacturing jobs have gone in the last 1 quarter or 2 quarters, those are all downward spiral. But if your organization needs to pull it up, you require this people, passion, and purpose. Now, some of you, please raise your hands, those who have read this Osborne report, 2013. Anybody in this room? The Osborne report, it is done by two people, but it is second author has become more well known, and it is referred to as Osborne report. What it has done in 2013 is they have analyzed 174 different job roles and looked at what is the probability of this getting affected by automation. And this is the list which I am putting up to you. You can see that tailors, dressmakers, and custom wears, the probability is 0.84. The sewing machine operators, 0.89. I presume that in the morning you must have touched about this artificial intelligence and robotics making some changes. But what I am addressing is that sometimes we have become so closed in our thinking that what is happening externally and the time runway which it is going to take for this change to arrive is often not correctly forecast. And therefore the people are not prepared. And this is one of the reasons why entire look at the competencies and skills of an organization has become required. Mainly because Industrial 4.0, though India has not yet accepted officially, like other countries have already done, the US has done, Japan has done, and Germany was the pioneer in that. And if that is the reality which it is going to work on, there needs to be an assessment of these skills and competencies which are required by an organization. What are those skills which are forecast by the World Economic Forum? They looked at in 2015 what were the skills which were there, and 2020 what are the kind of skills which are required. Complex problem solving still happens to be the number one. The ability of an organization's people at some level, the managerial level at least, to solve problems, critical thinking, and if you will find a sudden increase from the 10th level to number 3, creativity. Now, one of the recent surveys of 350 top-level executives in different sectors put together indicate that strategic and creative thinking is the single most deficiency which you find in organizations. And therefore, we can certainly do. I am not underestimating that, the power of incremental problem solving, which are a lot of seminars discuss those. But the breakthrough ideas which a company has to take, like TCNS introducing W. I remember this because I was at NIFT at that time, and they had called me for a discussion, and we were discussing in their office about what they should do as a company. And we had discussed this entire strategy because, domestic market was just opening up at that point in time. And we said that sometime you should look at a domestic brand. And I'm happy to see that, the W brand is doing well. Now, that is a thinking which you are suddenly doing because certain creativity is there in that company. Or, I know of a large export, the largest exporter in the country is setting up a complete team for, creative design team, which is set up by the company, only to look at the design interests, design trends, and forecasting trends. Well, those are the things which are now becoming more and more important in the skills repertoire. People management, coordinating with others, emotional intelligence. IQ and EQ are together becoming now the combination. At one point in time, we were only looking at IQ. Now we are looking at emotional quotient of the people. And that is one of the reasons why some of the companies are not able to take those decisions which are required on the face of many of the challenges which they are facing. Now, this was a survey in which OGTC had a role to play. And Kesarji must be able to tell how it happened. But GTE said, did this survey with OGTC. This is a 2007 survey. I hope it is repeated by OGTC or some other organization, because it shows where the Indian industry, especially in the NCR region, was standing at that point in time. I don't know how many of you have seen this. There are benchmarks shown in this, and the areas which are relevant in terms of the skill deficiencies which are found in the management of the organizations. Communication skills, discipline, leadership techniques, effective and logical decision making, 57.8%. Planning and organization, 56%. And there was quality and productivity. I'm happy that the case studies are addressing some of these issues. The repair and rejection rate is at times as high as 70%. And the efficiency rate in the industry is also at a level of 33%. How much has changed in the last 10 years? I don't know whether somebody in this room will answer in the question and answer session, by which we can say that, okay, we have really changed. And what did we do to change that? How much did our people get trained on those aspects? What did we do? I'm sure that OGTC does a lot of initiatives to improve people. But this is one question we need to address. It is a moving target. The type of changes which are required in every organization is a moving target. You can see that 89% of respondents said India incorporates biggest skill gaps are in innovation and strategic thinking, the creative thinking. And most of the organizations, if you are looking at the jar, as I started with a basket of skills, we need to really look at how far your organization is having that free energy with the creative energy available in terms of taking those decisions. And you can see that 88% said hiring is the biggest challenge for corporates, following the skill gaps, retention of high potential employee. I think it is more or less true with number of sectors in India when you look at the moving targets of this nature in terms of the skill requirements. Now, one of the issues which many people don't realize, today the continuous learning, it is not about training, it is now about creating learning organizations. It is about actually creating that ability, learnability in the people whom you have in the organization. My son always tells me, most of the advantages I have gained is not through courses for which I have paid. It is through the courses which I have not paid for anything, not even $1, that I have learned everything. And those are courses which are offered by Khan Academy. Those are courses offered by Coursera. Those are courses offered by Udacity. And those are available free of cost. I went recently to IIT Guwahati, and Ravi Mukherjee, the professor who is now the Dean of External Affairs, who was my colleague in NID, he and Ravi Puvaya, another professor from IIT Mumbai, they have together put all the design courses and resources online, free of cost. You can access all design courses on the IIT website if you go now and learn. And most of it IIT Delhi has done, most of the courses are online. MIT has done long ago. And all these courses, how many of our people in India are using it actively is a big question you should ask. And whether you are encouraging in your company for those skills which you are identifying. Suppose it is machine learning skills. Suppose it is the use of understanding cryptocurrency. Or it is the use of any other new technology which is coming up. Where all these courses are available. At best, we are sometimes using YouTube only. But I personally have benefited from Khan Academy. If you want to know Renaissance and how things changed, in 40 minutes videos, you are able to get everything which you wanted from the best minds possible in the world. Now, I think this is something which you need to keep in mind when you think about run. Reskilling, upskilling, and new skilling. This runway of reskilling, upskilling, and new skilling becomes today easily available. And I was just reading today, Chinese students are using the tutors of English and practically gaining an upper edge. Just a few years ago when I went to Beijing, they had an equipment. Every sentence you are uttering, they were recording that and getting a translation and replying to you back. They had so much of keenness. Every word which you utter needed to be captured by them. We are really looking at equipping our people, understanding them, using these various open sources now available in the world. And identify those skill sets and performance gaps. Assess the corporate learners' strengths, whether they are really learning people. In any interview you are selecting people, today you have to really assess whether the person has learnability. And evaluate the pain points and then available, the new skills, how to plan plan ahead in terms of the runway, in terms of the skill acquisition. Now, every learning organization can become a learning organization only if you have learning people. Now, it is not about people who have just taken a degree and think that, the end of the world has happened already. In fact, I would say the PhD which I took from IIT Delhi, the book which I wrote after that did not sell well at all. But the book which I wrote before that was a hot seller. It was a bestseller. Sometimes we think that, you have really arrived by getting a doctorate. It is not often so. It is only a point of the destination, but it is not. It is in the journey. It is not a destination. And the learning is about a continuum. It is about, throughout your life, you need to really now be a learning person. And if you think that, a PhD or a great degree has got you the job and that is the end of the story, which is happening across all the Indian organizations. This is one of the biggest problems we are facing in the country. People take a degree, they have taken a BTech, and they enter a job, and that is the end of their learning. And with those kind of people, if you're thinking that you are going to go against the gravity of the pull, And we say that every quarter, now the corporates are making losses, we are not having private investments. But where does the actual problem lie? The problem lies whether people have the ability to overcome the challenges, whether they have the creative energies to do that. Right. So the learnability becomes a critical issue. Now, when, one of the biggest difference of opinion I have is that we have been looking at sectors too narrowly and thinking that, every sector should have a certain kind of, training program. But really, if you look at the World Skills Organization and the World Economic Forum and many of the places looking at, in fact, all the skills in the world have been grouped by world skills under just 6 groupings. Similarly, if you look at the capabilities which a person should have, cognitive abilities, physical abilities, content skills, process skills, and cross-functional skills. And what is the on top priority today? Cross-functional skills. 36% people are required for complex problem solving means they should have cross-functional skills. They must have social skills and they must have process skills. And this is the projection for 2020. And if you look at all the training programs which we do in the country, are practically just looking at one particular operation and that being trained on them. We are really not looking at a kind of a composite view of the skills which are required to be imparted. Earlier training used to be like that in ITIs, and some of the skills which are imparted used to be for certain manufacturing jobs. But today when we look at agriculture sector, it still has 52% employment in the country. 25% is with the service sector, and 23% is with the manufacturing sector. And if still 52% of the employment is with the sector which is just having about 17-18% impact on the GDP, and 65% of the GDP is service sector, in that it has impact of only of 23% of the jobs, and manufacturing sector is still stagnant, not adding capacities. That means that we are really going to have a period of stagnation. Then how do you add value? You can actually look at the entire organization, start dividing people. What the last speaker said, those people who are going to do that are people who capture value. And there are people then who add value. And then there are people who create value. And most of the people and most of the activities of organization, unfortunately, are either simply in that capturing value and not necessarily adding value or creating value. Most of it is just maintenance, and it is probably incremental. And that is not enough today. You may do some cost saving, but you have to go beyond that if you want to really create organizations which will sustain and go beyond. And that is where you require to look at the entire skills. I told this in the Textiles 2017 seminar when Mr. Rudy and Ajay Tamdaji were on the dais. I do not particularly think the current skill development activity is looking at a composite individual like this Gesell colleges have done. When I told this, the minister said that, it is a scary situation. But I said, look, if you are training people and all those 15 lakh people in the integrated skill development scheme, or 18 million people who are joining the work sector are only going to get the entry level skills, and 0.86% is the probability, or 0.89 is the probability that these jobs will become automated, what will have to happen after 3 to 5 years? There will be revolution in the country, because people who we have trained will not know any job to do. And they will become your biggest problem in not only in Naxalite areas, from every part of the world, every part of the country, because you have spent a lot of money training them, and suddenly the jobs have been displaced by artificial intelligence or robotics or whatever automation, and you find them that they are unemployable. So whatever unemployment we have already seen in engineering, where almost 50 or 60% of the seats are now going begging, what is the point of training people at the lowest level, which becomes automated quite fast? So that is where this experiment by the UK colleges, 18 of them, joining together to call this Gesell group, which created this, it was always there, T model was always there, where you have a breadth of capabilities and a certain depth of certain skills, and you have a functional expertise and creative enterprise, or creativity and enterprise, which is an entrepreneurial outlook. And they created this model, which is now taken further by all these colleges. So I was advocating that while you are giving the skills to people, take a more composite view, making them a little more employable, not only for that one operation or a sewing machine operation which you're training, but a little more in the context of that organization's value-adding activity. It is important that every individual in this country has a higher level of creativity. It is a known fact. In Amartya Sen's book, he has paid rich compliments to the creativity of India. He has said that, China and even French, he has put a question mark and said that probably India has more creativity. If it is so, our training programs are not speaking that language. We are speaking purely of the factory to the world of Chinese approach. But what we can do is, we train, for example, about 21,000 people in embroidery. We find that embellishments in embroidery and value adding onto the fabric is what makes Indian fashion. And a lot of those women can work from home. If that is so, we need to really look at a little more deeply into the skill requirements of this country. We have just had discussions with the GAP PACE group. I just want to flag this issue. We are, I think, 10 from the bottom as far as women worker employment ratio is concerned. We are just about 6 to 7% of Indian women have really joined the workforce. 40% of Chinese women are in the workforce, and that is what actually contributed to the GDP growth of China. And if you are thinking that, I was very pleased to hear Rajiv Bajaj's speech in Quint the other day. He has set up an entirely, not Pulsar, probably one of the most complex motorcycles which he is doing at some heavy CC, heavy duty machine. Entirely women factory.
In Chakan, outside of Pune.
Outside of Pune. So if he has done that, and most of our factories are now, 82% of the people whom we've trained are women. Why are we not really looking at a program like what GAP has done with the personal advancement and career enhancement program? And I am told that Shahi Exports has done about 25 to 30,000 people trained under PACE program. And they say, Mr. Giri is not in this, he is, I think, traveling. He was telling me that between the line of the girls which are trained under PACE and those girls who are not in the PACE, there is a difference of almost 1 to 2 garments. If with one line which girls which are not having exposed to PACE is doing 10 garments, the other is doing 11 or 12. Without telling them this is anything to do with productivity. And if that kind of changes can happen, and David Heyer was telling me, if when I enter the factory that girls are looking confident, I know that that is a PACE group. He can see the difference, spot the difference, he was telling me today in a factory. Now, we are really keenly looking at now integrating the soft skills and life skills program with the PACE approach so that the women workforce in the country get a better deal. Because they can impact themselves, the individual, they can impact the family, they can impact the community, they can impact the factory. And it's a great possibility. And one of the biggest deficiency I find in the skill development approach in the country, they have not spoken a single word about tailoring our skill development efforts for empowering women. We talk broadly about empowerment of women, but we are not really doing anything about making specific scheme of looking at the skills and looking at the factories and looking at the situations where women can be effective. And tourism and hospitality, apparel and beauty and salon, all those kind of businesses are really going to be in the hands of women. And already, as the joke goes in the WhatsApp group, the external affairs and the defense have already gone to women, and home affairs is now given to men. So if that is going to be the reality, I think the time has come for the skill development ministry to declare that all boys should be put to military service for 2 or 3 years, compulsory military service. And the women should be taken to employment by giving them opportunities in apparel sector and other kind of such sectors where they are most suitable. And I appreciate these programs like this, which are specifically looking at women. Now to just wrap up, because I'm going to give the floor to Nimesh, I find the Achilles heel of the entire apparel industry seems to be in the supervisory training. We do not have sufficient supervisory training approach. Even Cambodia, when I was researching for this topic, I was seeing that they have a SST, Supervisory Skill Training Scheme. I know that we have done some work with the Gogilas group in Bangalore, where women were trained to become supervisors. I think 2 or 3 groups of people we trained. But I think a large-scale intervention in updating the skills of the supervisor in this country has become a pressing necessity. And if it is through that, all what it was told by Surender can be achieved. It cannot be achieved without that kind of a very rigorous approach to supervisory training. And similarly, this you must have read in WhatsApp group, but I'm just summarizing the disruptive times which we are, which we are facing. If you have not heard about it, you must read this entire article of MD of Daimler, the Mercedes-Benz factory. The software will disrupt most traditional industries in the next 5 to 10 years. We know that Uber is just a software tool. And Oyo, for example, is another software tool. But they are the people now, aggregators and marketplaces, which are controlling these markets. Artificial intelligence. The IBM Watson has replaced practically all entry-level questions of lawyers. And they are answering with about 92% or 70% accuracy. Is it correct? Yeah, 90% accuracy compared to 70% accuracy of humans. And all this is happening already in legal field. They are telling that don't become a lawyer now. Autonomous cars. They say most of the existing car companies will go bankrupt. And after hearing Mr. Gadkari's speech the other day, it may be faster in India. Last year,
excepting Toyota.
Excepting Toyota, yeah. And the solar energy, the Tesla's very sexy solar panels, if you see, great, great work they are doing. In health, the Star Trek days are back again with the tricorder and things like that. And 3D printing. I remember last year when I was delivering the convocation address in NIFT Bangalore, I had presented the girl who had made I think in Seattle or Philadelphia, an entire presentation of the final year presentation was made by 3D garments. And it's already becoming a reality. A number of, knitwear, which is becoming completely produced without touch of a human hand, just like the jewelry, Italian jewelries. It is possible now, and when we introduced in 2005, the first 3D printing situation in NID, which the President of India inaugurated, many people are telling this is far off. But today, big houses are being built by 3D printing. And it is just going to be very soon that we will see this very much part of our regular job. There will be agriculture, you can say 100%, there will be $100 agricultural robots in future. And the farmers will become the managers of these robots. And Bitcoin, already it might become a stock currency or reserve currency. The longevity, every year, 3 months per year, we are increasing. If you read the book, Yuval Noah's book, Homo Deus. Have you read this book? Raise your hands if you have read. It is 2 books he has written. The first one is called Homo sapien. The second is called Homo Deus. Homo Deus talks about that man has now given up physical war. It is not going to go to another country like Iraq and try to get oil fields because oil has now become irrelevant. Fossil is now irrelevant. Most of the great diseases are under control now. So what is the mankind's agenda? Because all your factories and countries are going to fall into a mankind's agenda. Mankind agenda seems to be immortality, part of it. And already Google is investing and Tesla is investing. And easily they are predicting by 2030 or 50, people will live easily up to 140 years. Only problem is Trump and Hitler may be also alive. So that is the only problem. So you need to be really careful about this immortality. And every year, 3 months are being added to our life. And already it is now increasing to 1 year per year now. So we are going to live long. And education, and we have seen that the computers and the kind of tutors which are available has changed. In this kind of disruptive times, it is only what I started by telling the Bernard Shaw, that if you are not able to change yourself, and if you're not able to accept the change as new normal, you will feel extremely uncomfortable. And that discomfort is not good for free energy. And free energy will keep coming down because you're already giving up the fight. And if you're not able to release this fight and create this interplay of energies active, the organizations start crumbling. And the passion dwindles because there is no free energy. And therefore, the organizations which are gearing up for the future, especially in Indian context, has these 2 clear periods ahead. 2017 to 22, by which time India becomes 75, and 2022 to 2035, when India starts becoming an aging society, by which about 20-22% of our population would have become aged, like in Japan. The chances of creating new brands, creating new avenues, then start dwindling. So you have a clear two seasons ahead for changing and for creating new initiatives, new trajectories for your organization. And I think this topic has been well selected, and I want to congratulate the whole team, and thank you again. Thank you, gentlemen.